Today we're here for an information session about the 2024 Funded Research Grant Program. And my plan today is to give a little bit of background about the Funded Research Grant and then to go through some frequently asked questions in hopes that maybe they'll answer questions you have. And then we should have plenty of time left over um, to answer any other questions. If you'd like to preview what the application form looks like live, we can do that as well. And then this will be posted to our ACUHO-I YouTube channel once we're done. So let's see. There we go. So as I said, this is being recorded and will be posted to the YouTube channel. The slides that I'm sharing here, I will link in the video description on YouTube, so they'll be available for you to access as well. And if there are other questions that come up after today, those can be sent to the research email account, which is just research@acuhoi.org. All right, so first, some important dates for this year. The application is open on March 1st at 12 a.m., and it's going to remain open through 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on April 7th, which I believe is a Sunday. All applicants will be notified of their status by the end of May, and the recipients of this year's grant funds will be announced in June. So typically, we do that after all of the behind the scenes work is done, and we'll share information about the recipients and the research that we funded for the next year. So a little background on the program is that ACUHO-I broadly is committed to the creation and dissemination of knowledge about campus housing, as well as the issues that impact the post-secondary experience. And so a funded research grant program was created to support our goal of cultivating knowledge resources for our members. So the aim of the funded research grant program is really to encourage scholars and practitioners to conduct high quality research that supports ACUHO-I's research agenda priorities, as well as the future of the profession imperative areas. So some frequently asked questions. Just received this one recently. Who can submit a proposal? Well, we welcome grant proposals from faculty, from practitioners, and from graduate students. We've had quite a few from graduate students in the last couple of years. We also fund studies within and outside of the United States, so we welcome international research as well, and we encourage all who are interested to apply. Another question that was submitted actually by someone who registered for today: what type of research are you looking for, or what type of research is accepted? So in broad terms, the research must relate to campus housing and the larger issues that impact the post-secondary experience. And within that, we ask that you tie your research to at least one feature of the profession imperative or one research agenda priority. It can be one of each, it can be multiple of each, but that you specifically state which of those your work connects to. And as I said, you can identify multiple areas. And when you're actually completing the application form, you will see that there is a question where you must select which of the future of the profession imperatives and or research agenda priorities your research aligns with. And you should also make it clear in your potential implications section of your proposal that there is a link between your work and those areas. So what are the research agenda priorities? These would be public-private partnerships, student outcomes, and student success. These are very broad. And so my advice here for most folks is that you can pretty much fit any research in housing and residence life into one of these buckets or more than one. There is more detail about these on the research website. So if you go to the ACUHO-I homepage and you go to the section that talks about research, you're going to see a description of each of these priority areas as well if you're looking for more detail there. Future of the profession, or FOTP, as I've written here. These are the imperative areas. These are also on the ACUHO-I website. And there's a link to where you can find this information within the application form. So if you want to reference it while you're working on that, there's a link there to get you out to that page directly. But these are centering housing, work, and operational learning, communicating the value of campus housing for student success, creating inclusive communities, facility design and maintenance, strategic collaborations and partnerships, supporting the mental health of community members, the higher education business model, and workforce sustainability. I think there's really a lot of overlap between these and the research agenda priorities. And so, again, it would be easy to make a case for selecting from both of those lists when you're preparing your proposal. So what information is required to apply? Well, you're going to start with personal information. So if you're the primary investigator, you'll be able to select that, and it'll pull in your information from your profile within the ACUHO-I portal. If you have a co-PI or more than one co-PI, you can select that and provide their information as well. You'll then be asked to provide proposal details. So the first question is going to be that connection to the research agenda and feature of the profession, as I just mentioned. You're going to be asked about your IRB approval status, and there are multiple options there: approved, pending, or not yet submitted. And I believe there is also a fourth option if your status doesn't fit in 3, where you can provide some more detail about where you're at in that process. We ask for a title. And then you have 4 sections where you're going to be writing in or copying and pasting in information. That's going to be your abstract, your introduction, your methodology, and implications. There are details about what specifically you should include in those 4 sections on our website. There are resource documents there. There's also instructions within the application form to give you guidance about what you should be writing there. And these are the associated word limits, which are also listed in the application. And then the last section is uploads. And this is where you have both required and optional documents that you can provide us. So required would be references. So references, all of the citations in your abstract, introduction, methodology, implications, timeline for your research, your budget document. And then if you have IRB approval, you would be able to submit that documentation, but that would be an if available. And then if applicable, so if it applies to your specific study, instruments, an outline of questions you may be asking if it's qualitative. So interview questions, focus group questions. And then if there are any other additional documents that you feel are relevant and that should be considered with your proposal, that would also be something that you could upload as well. A common question relates to budget. What should I include in my budget? There is a help document, a resource document on our website that includes an example of what that could look like and talks through some of the allowable expenses. But what I've shared here is what is typically included. Not all inclusive of what's allowed, but typically participant incentives are included as a budget item. Expenses related to data collection and analysis. So interview transcription services or software, statistical software, and then student research assistant stipends would also be something that's allowed as an included expense. It may also be possible to include travel expenses specifically related to data collection that may be considered as an allowable expense. I would say if you're looking to do that, to contact me and we can see whether what you're looking at including would be considered allowable. At a minimum, when you're preparing your budget, you should have a line item. So title of the line item, a description of what that is, and then a breakdown of the cost. And so for example, if you are doing interviews and you need to have them transcribed, say, what software or service you're going to use and what the approximate cost would be. Obviously, you're not going to know down to the minute what that's going to be ahead of time, but an approximate idea works fine of what you think that would be. And that would be enough information for us when we're reviewing the budget as part of the proposal. And as I said, there is an example budget in the resource document on our website. And any questions you have about expenses can be sent to that research account, which I manage. And so I'll follow up with you to provide some clarification there. The maximum funding allowed per proposal is $7,000 US dollars. So I put that there just as a reminder that you should not include anything above $7,000 in your budget because it wouldn't be funded. So how are proposals judged? Well, we use a blind review process, and we have a minimum of 2 rounds of review before finalists are selected. Those that are judging or reviewing the proposals have a rubric that is provided that shares instructions for how to evaluate each aspect of the proposal, including those sections that I mentioned: introduction, methodology, implications, as well as the uploads that are required. If optional uploads are included, those would also be assessed. And then the overall application, which would focus on a question related to inclusiveness, and then a question about clarity and organization. After that process is completed, the reviewers would provide an overall recommendation. So do not accept, accept with revisions, or accept. And I wanted to clarify and put it here that it is possible for a proposal to be funded pending revisions. And while IRB approval is required for funding to be dispersed, it is not required for the proposal to be accepted. So we would look for it to at least have been submitted to IRB, but we don't require IRB approval before accepting a proposal. Also, sometimes get questions about how grant funds are dispersed. So grant funds are distributed to the recipient's institution, not to the individual, and it is sent to the institution as a block grant. We work with the sponsored research office or similar, whatever the title is at your institution, to coordinate the logistics of that. But typically we send a check to that office, and then the funds would be managed through them. Grant recipients would work with the staff liaison, which is typically myself, to coordinate funding details. I would then serve as your point of contact throughout the entirety of the grant process for any questions you might have, and as you're making progress through the different aspects of the grant agreement. At the very beginning, once you're notified that you've been selected to receive funding, we would meet to review your grant agreement, answer questions, and confirm details about where the grant funds should be distributed at your institution. And as I said before, IRB approval would be required before we would distribute those funds. We would talk about this in more detail once we go through your grant agreement, but I did want to share up front that we do ask for a couple of deliverables in return for the grant funding. And so that would include you submitting a manuscript for consideration to ACUHO-I, our journal, that you host a webinar about your research. We record this and then we share it on our YouTube channel, and that you create a white paper template provided that would summarize your research and your findings, really focusing on the applied aspects, so the implications and what it would mean for practitioners in the field. We do post this in the ACUHO-I bookstore as a free benefit for members, and there is then a small, I think around $10 fee to purchase for non-members to access that. And then finally, just some helpful tips. So we do this year have our proposal form in the ACUHO-I portal. So if you log into your portal and you go to events, you're going to see funded research grant listed as an event where you're able to submit similar to Campus Home Live, sort of like submitting an abstract, but you would be submitting your proposal there. There's also a link to go directly into that form through the portal if you go to the Funded Research Grant website. So there's a button there that you can click to go there as well. Once you start that application form, you will first be asked to review your profile information. So just to make sure we have all your updated contact information before you progress to the application. Some new features that I think improve the user experience are that you can save your progress and finish later, and you do not need to complete it in one sitting. You can go back to prior pages. So there's now a back button to allow you to go forwards and backwards and edit. And you can actually submit and then continue to make edits until the deadline of April 7th at 11:59 p.m. So you'll see it listed in your portal under the event as a submitted abstract, and you'd then be able to make edits through that deadline. And then also for uploads, you can submit a Word or PDF file, but the application also allows for you to include a URL instead. So if you have a Google Doc or some other external document that you would rather share that way versus uploading, that is also an option this year, which was not an option in the past. And that is all of the slides I have. So I'm going to stop sharing quickly so that I can answer any questions you might have. And if you'd like to see what the application form looks like, I can also bring that up and share my screen to show that as well.
Tori, a question.
Mm-hmm.
If the PI or the co-PI is not in the ACUHO-I portal membership database, can they still submit an application? If not, how do they get access?
All they'd have to do is create a login through the website, which would give them access to the portal, and they would be able to submit. So you do not need to be a member to access the application form. If there's any trouble, though, accessing it, just email me and I can provide an alternate way to access. I believe I have it pulled up already. Let's see if I can share my screen again and show you what it looks like to navigate around. So I'm logged into the portal here because I wanted to show you that where you would go to find this. So if we go to events, say browse upcoming events, you're going to see it right here. First one, because it's ongoing. If we click on that, you're going to find more information here, the timeline I shared. These are links to those resources I mentioned. So they're on our website and they're also here within the portal. And then if you're ready to start, you would just go up here to submit proposal. As I mentioned, it's going to bring up your information first so you can verify that. If you need to change anything, you can. If not, you can just hit save and it'll go forward. And then this is where you actually can start the application form. It's broken up into sections. So the first one is your information, where you'll be able to select the research agenda priorities and the future of the profession imperative areas, and then IRB approval. As I mentioned, there's a save and return later feature, so you don't have to do it all in one setting. Then here's where we get into some of the details of your proposal. So the title, and where you're able to write in your abstract or copy and paste. There is a little feature here where it'll tell you how many words you're at. So that's helpful since there is a word limit to keep track there. And there is formatting available as well. So in previous years, you couldn't format the text you were including. So if you want to add in, italicized or bolded words, or you want to do some indentation, have lists, however you would want to do that, those options are available here. There's a back button, again, if you wanted to go back to a previous page. And then here is where you would do all of your uploads. And as I said, there's this button where you could instead switch and enter a URL instead of uploading. So you can just toggle that if you want to switch over. There's help text under each of these to give you an idea of what you're supposed to be including here. And if I go back and show that there is also information for each of these sections to tell you what you should be including when you're writing or preparing to submit these areas. And then there is a final screen where you get to review everything that you've included before you would then hit save, and that would submit it for you. You could then go up to my proposals, and once you submit it or you save it and hit that save and return later, it would show up here under my abstracts, and you could then go in and edit it, as I was saying, through that deadline. Looks like, yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you. That's really useful.
No?
Thank you for the overview. I think this covered what I was hoping to learn today.
Okay, great. Well, if there's no more questions, then you'll get 30 minutes back of your
Life.
of your day, of your potential lunch hour or whatever it might be. So thank you for joining, and the slides will be posted hopefully by the end of Monday, maybe sooner. So they'll be available for you there. And I have a record of everyone that registered, so I'll also reach out to share
Good.
the link there as well.
Super. You guys hopefully can put your snow shovels away by the end of the weekend.
I hope so.
Okay. Thanks
All
and
right.
bye-bye.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.